Some scandals are whispered in back rooms. Others explode under the glare of 1,000 flashbulbs. For Cole Harrington, a man who built an empire on predicting market trends, the one trend he never saw coming was his own spectacular downfall. On a night draped in diamonds and champagne at the Metropolitan Museum Charity Gala, he committed an act so publicly vile, so callously cruel, that it would sever his life in two. He shoved his pregnant wife, Lauren, to appease his mistress. But the real story isn't the shove that the whole world saw. It's what happened hours later in the dead of night, when the gates of his own magnificent estate swung shut, and the man who thought he owned the world was escorted off his property like a common trespasser. This isn't just a story of infidelity. It's a story of consequence, of a secret power held by the woman he tried to break. And the night a titan of industry learned what it truly meant to be left with nothing. The air in the grand hall of the Metropolitan Museum was thick with the scent of money, a heady perfume of expensive florals, vintage champagne, and the collective ambition of New York City's elite. It was the annual charity gala, the undisputed pinnacle of the social calendar, where fortunes were pledged on silent auction cards and reputations were made or shattered between the appetizer and the main course. From the outside, Cole and Lauren Harrington were the evening's crowning jewels. He was Cole Harrington, the CEO of Harrington Capital, a real estate and tech conglomerate that had reshaped the city's skyline. He was tall, with dark hair just starting to silver at the temples, a feature the society pages called distinguished. His smile, a practiced lethal weapon, could close a billion-dollar deal or charm the most cynical journalist. Tonight he wore a custom Tom Ford tuxedo, the fabric so fine it seemed to drink the light. She was Lauren Harrington, née Bennett. Where Cole was all sharp angles and predatory grace, Lauren was soft-spoken elegance and quiet intelligence. An architectural historian by training, she had a discerning eye that could see the soul of a building, a skill she now applied to navigating the fragile structures of high society. Tonight she was breathtaking in a deep sapphire gown by Oscar de la Renta that flowed over her body, artfully draping over the gentle swell of her 5-month pregnancy. A cascade of diamonds, the Harrington stars, glittered at her throat, a previous anniversary gift that now felt less like a token of love and more like a beautiful, diamond-studded collar. To the casual observer, they were a portrait of success. But up close, the canvas was cracked. For the past hour, Cole had been holding court, his hand never straying far from the small of Lauren's back, in a proprietary gesture purely for the cameras. But his eyes, those sharp, calculating grey eyes, were constantly scanning the room. Lauren knew who he was looking for. She had known for 6 agonizing months. Her name was Scarlett Monroe. Scarlett was everything Lauren wasn't. She was 26, a piranha in the guise of a social media influencer with a manufactured pout and a body sculpted by discipline and a surgeon's knife. She'd started as a junior marketing associate at Harrington Capital, and within a year she was on Cole's arm at private corporate events, and soon after, in his bed. Tonight she was a vision in blood-red silk, a stark, deliberate contrast to Lauren's serene blue. She wasn't at their table, of course, that would be too brazen even for Cole, but she was strategically placed at a nearby one, surrounded by a coterie of sycophants. Her laughter was just a little too loud, her gaze a little too possessive whenever it landed on their table. "Darling," Cole murmured, his voice a low thrum against her ear, his breath smelling of whiskey. "You haven't said a word for 10 minutes. People will think you're bored." It wasn't a question of concern, it was a command. "Perform." Lauren forced a smile, the muscles in her face feeling stiff. "I'm just taking it all in, Cole. It's quite the spectacle." She took a delicate sip of sparkling water. The baby gave a gentle flutter inside her, a small, secret comfort. "Nate Whitaker is staring," Cole noted, his jaw tightening slightly as he glanced across the room. Nate was his chief rival, a bulldog of a man who ran a competing firm. "He looks like he's waiting for one of us to trip. Don't give him the satisfaction." Lauren's smile became a little more genuine, tinged with irony. "I have no intention of tripping." The evening wore on, a torturous parade of fake smiles and stilted conversations. Lauren felt like a ghost haunting her own life. She watched Cole glad-hand a senator, his laughter booming, while she discussed 18th century Parisian architecture with a woman whose face was pulled so tight she seemed perpetually surprised. All the while, the invisible string between Cole and Scarlett seemed to pull tighter, a tangible force in the glittering room. Lauren could see the smirks they exchanged over the tops of champagne flutes, the way his eyes would follow Scarlett as she moved through the crowd. The trouble began during the live auction. A lavish 7-day yacht trip through the Greek Isles was on the block. The bidding was fierce, quickly climbing into the six figures. "Let's get it," Cole said suddenly, grabbing his bidding paddle. "A baby moon. It'll be perfect." Lauren looked at him, truly looked at him for the first time all night. The suggestion was so audacious, so utterly detached from the cold reality of their marriage, that she felt a bubble of hysterical laughter rise in her throat. A baby moon, as if they were a normal, happy couple, anticipating the arrival of their child, and not a man, his wife, and the spectre of his mistress, all breathing the same recycled air. Before she could form a reply, Scarlett made her move. She glided over to their table, a vision in crimson, her smile wide and predatory. "Cole, darling," she purred, completely ignoring Lauren. "My table is simply dying to know if the rumors are true. Are you really planning to break ground on the new Celestial Tower before Christmas?" Her hand rested familiarly on his shoulder, her long red nails a stark contrast against the black of his tuxedo. It was a power play executed in front of God and everyone. She was marking her territory. The nearby tables fell into a hushed silence, all eyes on the tableau. This was the drama they had paid thousands of dollars to see. Cole, caught between his public image and his private indiscretions, stiffened. He was a man who hated being cornered. "Scarlett," he said, his voice a low warning. "We're in the middle of the auction." "Oh, don't be such a bore." She laughed, a tinkling sound that grated on Lauren's nerves. She leaned in closer, her lips almost touching his ear, whispering something that made a slow, dark smile spread across Cole's face. Lauren felt a cold dread wash over her. It was one thing to endure the private humiliation, the knowledge of his betrayal. It was another to have it flaunted so publicly, to be rendered invisible in her own chair while her husband was seduced in plain sight. The baby kicked harder this time, as if sensing its mother's distress. That was it. She couldn't sit there for one more second. Slowly, gracefully, she placed her napkin on the table and rose. "If you'll excuse me," she said, her voice quiet but clear, cutting through the charged air. "I need some air." She didn't look at Cole, but she felt his irritation, a palpable wave of anger. Her leaving was an indictment, a crack in the perfect facade. She turned to walk away, her back straight, her head held high. What happened next seemed to unfold in surreal slow motion. "Lauren, sit down," Cole commanded, his voice a harsh whisper. She ignored him, taking another step. Scarlett, seeing her prize momentarily distracted, chose that moment to up the ante. Let her go, Cole. She's probably just feeling emotional. You know, the hormones. She let out a small, condescending laugh. That was the spark that lit the fuse. Cole, enraged at being publicly managed by both his wife and his mistress, reacted with the brutish instinct of a cornered animal. He stood up, intending to grab Lauren's arm to physically pull her back into her seat and restore his semblance of control. But he misjudged the distance. He misjudged his own whiskey-fueled frustration. He misjudged the slight shift in Lauren's balance as she turned. His hand didn't grab her arm. It shoved. It was a hard, impatient push to her shoulder. For a woman not carrying the precious weight of a child, it might have resulted in a stumble. For Lauren, 5 months pregnant and caught off guard, it was catastrophic. She cried out, a small gasp of shock and fear, as her heel caught on the leg of a chair. She pinwheeled backward, her arms flailing for something to hold on to. The sapphire gown swirled around her as she fell, a collapsing constellation of blue silk and shattered dignity. She landed hard on her side, the impact jarring through her entire body. The collective gasp of the hundreds of onlookers was like the sound of the tide being sucked out to sea, leaving behind a silent, horrified shore. For a moment, there was no sound but the frantic clicking of cameras as photographers, smelling blood in the water, captured the image that would be on the front page of every tabloid by morning. Cole Harrington, titan of industry, standing over his fallen pregnant wife, while his mistress in red looked on with a flicker of triumph in her eyes. In that frozen moment, as a sharp, terrifying pain shot through her abdomen, Lauren looked up at her husband. She saw no remorse in his eyes, only fury. Fury at her for creating a scene, for embarrassing him. And in his eyes, she saw the end of everything, and the beginning of something else. The silence in the grand hall lasted for what felt like an eternity, a vacuum of shock that sucked all the air from the room. Then chaos erupted. People surged to their feet. A woman screamed. Waitstaff rushed forward, their professionalism warring with their horror. Nate Whitaker, Cole's rival, was one of the first to reach Lauren. He knelt beside her, his usual smug expression replaced by one of genuine concern. "Lauren, are you all right? Don't move. Someone call a doctor." Cole seemed to snap out of his stupor, the gravity of his public act finally piercing his whiskey-fueled rage. The flashbulbs were like relentless, accusatory strobes, searing the moment into history. "Lauren, my God," he blustered, rushing to her side and trying to wave Whitaker away. "Get away from her. It was an accident. She stumbled." But Lauren wasn't looking at him. Her eyes were wide with fear, one hand instinctively clutching her stomach, where the sharp pain was now a dull, terrifying ache. 2 medically trained gala attendees, a surgeon and a nurse, were already there, gently assessing her. "I'm fine," she whispered, though she wasn't sure if it was true. I need to go." The humiliation was a physical thing, a hot flush that spread across her skin. The shove was bad enough. The pity in the eyes of her peers was unbearable. Cole was in full damage control mode, his voice loud and performative. "Of course, darling, let's get you home. Everyone, please give us some space. My wife is pregnant. She just felt faint and I tried to catch her." The lie was so bald, so pathetic, that a low murmur of disbelief rippled through the crowd. Everyone had seen it. The shove, the anger. Scarlett Monroe, realizing she was now at the center of a PR nuclear blast, had already begun to discreetly melt back into the crowd, her face a mask of panicked innocence. A security detail from the museum helped Lauren to her feet. She refused to take Cole's offered hand, instead leaning on the arm of a stoic security guard. "I'll take my own car," she said, her voice low and steady, a stark contrast to Cole's frantic energy. "Don't be ridiculous, Lauren," he hissed, trying to steer her toward the exit. "We'll leave together. We need to present a united front." She stopped and looked at him. The look in her eyes was not one of sadness or betrayal. It was something colder, something harder. It was the look of a decision being made. "No, Cole, we don't." She walked away, a small, regal procession of 2 security guards and the concerned nurse, leaving him standing alone in the wreckage of his own making. The flashbulbs followed her out, but then they swung back to him, hungry for the next chapter of the drama. The ride home to their sprawling estate in Greenwich, Connecticut, was a study in transformation. The initial shock and fear for her baby began to recede, replaced by a glacial calm. The pain in her side had subsided to a throbbing reminder of the violation, but a quick, discreet call to her obstetrician from the back of the car reassured her that unless the pain worsened or other symptoms appeared, the baby was likely cushioned and safe. The doctor's calm voice was a balm, allowing Lauren's mind to shift from fear to focus. She didn't cry. The time for tears was long past, wasted over months of lonely nights and suspicious text messages. The public humiliation was not the wound. It was the anesthetic. It had numbed her to any lingering hope, any last shred of affection she might have harbored for the man she had once loved. The shove was not an act of passion. It was an act of convenience. He had pushed her aside, physically and metaphorically, to clear the path to what he truly wanted. And in the silent, leather-clad cocoon of the chauffeured Maybach, Lauren Harrington decided that she was done being pushed. She pulled out her phone. Her thumb hovered over her contacts before she pressed the first name. The phone rang only once. "Harold," she said, her voice perfectly even. "Lauren," the voice on the other end replied. It was her maternal grandfather, Harold Bennett. He was 86, with a mind as sharp as a diamond cutter. He was old money, the quiet kind, built on patents and shrewd, century-old investments, not the flashy, brittle kind Cole represented. "I saw the alert from the Times. Are you and the little one all right?" He was always direct. "We're all right, Grandpa. A little shaken, but we're fine." "Good," he said, the single word carrying the weight of immense relief. "Then it's time." "It's time," Lauren confirmed, a sliver of steel entering her voice. "The arrangements are in place, as they have been for the last year. Ava is ready. Mr. Calloway is on site. You just need to give the word." "Consider it given," she said. "I'm 10 minutes out." "I'm proud of you, Lauren," he said softly. "Your grandmother would be too. She never did like men who confused bluster with strength." A single hot tear finally escaped Lauren's eye, but she wiped it away fiercely. "Thank you, Grandpa. I'll call you tomorrow." She disconnected and immediately dialed her second number. Ava Sharma speaking. The voice was crisp, efficient, and devoid of fluff. Ava was the head of family law at the most fearsome legal firm in the state. "Ava, it's Lauren Harrington." "Lauren, I've been alerted. Harold called me a few minutes ago. Are you certain?" "He shoved me, Ava. He shoved his pregnant wife in front of 200 people so his mistress wouldn't be inconvenienced." Lauren stated the facts, laid out like cold, hard evidence. "I have never been more certain of anything in my life." "Understood," Ava said. "The morality clause of the prenuptial agreement is now active. The paperwork is prepared. Mr. Calloway of Citadel Security has been given his instructions, effective upon your arrival at the property. All assets held within the Bennett Family Trust, including the Greenwich estate and its contents, are now under your sole and exclusive control. His access has been revoked." Lauren closed her eyes, a wave of dizzying finality washing over her. "Thank you, Ava. Just get inside and lock the doors, Lauren. We'll handle the rest." Meanwhile, Cole was in his own car, fuming. Scarlett was beside him, having slithered out a side exit to meet him. "Can you believe the nerve of her?" Scarlett fumed, reapplying her lipstick in the vanity mirror. "Walking out like that, making you look like a monster. She's so manipulative." Cole wasn't listening. He was on the phone with his head of PR, a man named Greg Porter. "Just kill it!" Cole snarled into the phone. "I don't care what it costs. Call the editors. Call the publishers. Tell them it was a misunderstanding, a dizzy spell. I was helping her." "Cole, it's everywhere," Greg's panicked voice crackled back. "Billionaire shoves pregnant wife. Video is already going viral. It's not good." "Then make it good," he roared, throwing his phone onto the opposite seat in disgust. He rubbed his temples, the whiskey buzz having curdled into a vicious headache. He was furious with Lauren. How dare she embarrass him like this? He'd smooth it over, of course. He always did. He'd buy her a new necklace, a bigger one this time. Maybe a car. She'd cry a little. He'd apologize with half-hearted sincerity. And then life would go on. He was Cole Harrington. Life always went on. On his terms. "Don't worry, baby," Scarlett cooed, sliding her hand onto his thigh. "She'll get over it. Once you're home, you can handle her." "Yeah," Cole muttered, his confidence slowly returning. "Yeah, I'll handle her." 40 minutes later, his Bentley crested the hill leading to his estate. The place was his sanctuary, his monument to himself, a 25,000-square-foot Georgian mansion on 50 acres of pristine Connecticut waterfront. He'd supervised every detail of its renovation after he and Lauren married. It was the ultimate symbol of his power. As they approached the main gates, massive wrought-iron monstrosities, he pressed the remote. Nothing happened. He pressed it again, harder this time. The gates remained shut. "What the hell?" he muttered. He could see the lights on in the main house, a warm, inviting glow against the night sky. Lauren's Maybach was parked in the circular driveway. He laid on the horn, a long, angry blast. After a moment, a figure emerged from the gatehouse. Not the usual friendly night guard, but a man in a severe black suit. Cole recognized him vaguely. Mr. Calloway, the head of the private security firm Lauren's family used for their various properties. Calloway walked calmly to the driver's side window. Cole powered it down, his face a mask of indignation. "Calloway, what's the problem? Open the damn gate." "Good evening, Mr. Harrington," Calloway said, his voice polite but firm. He held a tablet in his hand, his eyes flat, impassive. "I'm afraid I can't do that." Cole stared at him, dumbfounded. "What do you mean you can't do that? I own this place. You work for me." A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched Calloway's lips. "That is a common misconception, sir. My firm, Citadel Security, is contracted by the Bennett Family Trust, which is the legal owner of this property. My duty is to the trust and its designated beneficiary." Scarlett, in the passenger seat, looked confused. "The what?" Cole felt a cold knot of dread begin to form in his stomach. "What the hell are you talking about? This is my house." "According to the legal directives I received at 9:47 p.m. this evening from Ms. Ava Sharma on behalf of the beneficiary, Mrs. Lauren Harrington," Calloway continued, his tone as unforgiving as a legal document. "Your access privileges to this property have been permanently revoked." He turned his head slightly, gesturing back toward the mansion that glowed under the moonlight, a fortress Cole himself had perfected. "Mr. Harrington," Calloway said, his voice dropping to a quiet, final tone, "you are no longer welcome on this property. "I must ask you to leave immediately." Cole stared at him, the polite, firm words failing to penetrate the thick wall of his indignation. The world, as Cole Harrington knew it, didn't operate this way. Gates opened for him. Doors unlocked. People yielded. The suggestion that he, in his own driveway, at the foot of his own palatial home, could be denied entry was so fundamentally absurd it bordered on the comical. "Are you insane?" Cole's voice was dangerously low, a coiled serpent of fury. "This is a joke. A stupid, vindictive little game Lauren is playing because she's hormonal and embarrassed. I demand you put her on the intercom now." Mr. Calloway, a man whose placid expression suggested he had faced down far worse than an irate billionaire, did not move a muscle. He stood with his hands clasped behind his back, a monolith in a perfectly tailored suit. "Mrs. Harrington has left explicit instructions not to be disturbed, sir. She is resting." "Resting?" Cole let out a harsh, incredulous laugh. "She's not resting. She's plotting. This is pathetic, even for her." He leaned out the window, his face contorted with scorn. "Calloway, let's be clear. My name is on the checks that pay your salary. My company's security contracts are worth millions. You work for me. Now, for the last time, open this damn gate before I make one phone call and ensure you're directing traffic in a mall parking lot in Ohio by tomorrow morning." The threat, one that had humbled senators and terrified rivals, simply dissipated in the cool night air. Calloway's expression remained unchanged, but there was a subtle shift in his eyes, a glint of something that looked almost like pity. "That is a common misconception, sir," Calloway said, his tone as even as a frozen lake. "My firm, Citadel Security, is not contracted by you, nor by Harrington Capital. Our client is, and has always been, the Bennett Family Trust." The words hung in the space between them. From the passenger seat, Scarlett, who had been watching the exchange with a mixture of amusement and impatience, finally spoke up. "The what? What is he talking about, Cole?" "A trust," he muttered. A cold, slithering dread was beginning to snake its way up his spine, far more chilling than the night air. The Bennett Family Trust. He remembered the name from the mountain of paperwork he'd blindly signed before the wedding. He had assumed it was some dusty old entity managing Lauren's inheritance. A few stocks, maybe a summer cottage in Maine. Nothing of consequence. "The trust owns this property, Mr. Harrington," Calloway continued, as if sensing the gears of confusion and horror grinding in Cole's mind. "It has been the legal owner for over 60 years. Your wife, Lauren, as the primary beneficiary, holds sole authority over residential access. As of approximately 1 hour ago, she invoked her rights under that authority." He lifted the tablet, the screen glowing with what looked like a legal document. "According to the directive I received at 9:47 p.m. this evening from Miss Ava Sharma, on behalf of Mrs. Harrington, your access privileges to the property at 1100 Cove Road and all associated structures have been permanently and irrevocably revoked." Revoked. The word was a hammer blow. It was the word used for credit cards, for driver's licenses, for disgraced memberships. It was not a word that applied to him. This is theft," Cole sputtered, his voice cracking. "I renovated this house. I poured a fortune into it. The marble in that foyer is from Carrara. I selected it myself. That's my home." "With all due respect, sir," Calloway said, retaining his maddening calm, "you have been residing here as a guest of Mrs. Harrington. A long-term guest, certainly, but a guest nonetheless. A guest." The word struck him with the force of a physical blow, knocking the air from his lungs. For 5 years he had strode through those halls, hosted global figures, and ruled his domain with the absolute certainty of an emperor. And all along, in the cold, hard letter of the law, he had been nothing more than a visitor. A guest who had just committed the ultimate faux pas at the dinner party. His phone buzzed violently in the center console, a frantic, angry vibration. He snatched it up, desperate for a lifeline, a connection to the world where he was still in charge. The caller ID was a name he knew, but had never spoken to. Ava Sharma, Lauren's lawyer. He jabbed the screen to answer, his voice a venomous hiss. "You've got a lot of damn nerve. Mr. Harrington." Ava's voice was as cool, sharp, and sterile as a surgeon's scalpel. "I trust Mr. Calloway has explained the immediate situation. I am simply calling to formalize it, so there are no lingering misunderstandings that might lead to any unpleasantness with law enforcement." "Unpleasantness?" Cole's voice rose to a near shriek. "You've locked me out of my house." "Correction," Ava said, clinical. "We have secured Mrs. Harrington's house, as per the prenuptial agreement you signed on May 12th, 2020. I'd refer you to Section 4, subsection B, regarding acts of public humiliation or physical endangerment directed at either party. A breach of this clause, as has been witnessed by several hundred individuals and countless recording devices this evening, triggers several non-negotiable consequences, the first of which is Mrs. Harrington's right to exclusive and immediate possession of her primary residence." "I'll fight this," Cole seethed, the words feeling hollow even as he said them. "I'll drag this through every court in the country. I'll bleed you dry." A faint, dry sound came through the phone, something that might have been a humorous chuckle. "I wouldn't advise that. Discovery would be extensive, but since you brought up finances, let's talk about your renovations. We have meticulous records of your expenditures. The prenuptial agreement is quite clear. Any financial contributions to pre-existing, non-marital assets are to be legally defined as gifts to the trust. It was very generous of you, Mr. Harrington. You've significantly increased the value of your wife's property." The sheer, calculated brilliance of it was suffocating. He had been outmaneuvered from the very beginning, checkmated by a quiet old man and a legal document he had dismissed as a trifle. "Mr. Calloway, as an agent of the trust, has the authority to have you cited for trespassing," Ava continued. "Given the events of tonight, I imagine your board of directors would prefer you not add a mugshot to your burgeoning public relations crisis. I strongly advise you to leave quietly. A courier will deliver the full legal notice to your office in the morning. Good night, Mr. Harrington." The line went dead, leaving a silence in the car that was louder than any shouting. Cole sat clutching his phone, his knuckles white. He was breathing heavily, his mind a maelstrom of rage, humiliation, and burgeoning panic. He stared past Calloway's impassive form at the mansion on the hill. His kingdom. The warm lights in the windows, which had seemed so inviting moments before, now felt like triumphant eyes mocking him. He could picture Lauren inside, perhaps standing by the grand bay window in the living room, watching this entire pathetic drama unfold. The image was so emasculating, it made him physically ill. "Cole?" Scarlett's voice was small, tentative, laced with a fear that was rapidly replacing her earlier excitement. The fantasy of the all-powerful billionaire was crumbling before her very eyes. The man beside her wasn't a titan. He was a man arguing with a security guard, a man being lectured by a lawyer over the phone. The allure of his power was predicated on it being absolute. This was pathetic. "So what do we do? Where do we go?" He turned to look at her, really look at her, for the first time since they'd left the gala. Her face, framed by the garish red of her dress, was a mask of naked, opportunistic concern. She wasn't worried about him. She was worried about her situation. about what this collapse meant for her. She was the catalyst, the cheap thrill for which he had just incinerated his entire life. A wave of revulsion, directed as much at himself as at her, washed over him. "We," he spat, the word dripping with venom. "There is no we. There was never a we. You were a diversion, an accessory, and now you're an accomplice to a disaster." Scarlett recoiled, her carefully constructed pout twisting into a snarl of indignation. "How is this my fault? You were the one who pushed your pregnant wife in front of the entire world. Dow, because of you!" he roared, finally unleashing the full force of his frustration on the only available target. "Because you couldn't stay at your table. You had to come over. You had to perform. To stake your claim on something that was never yours. You're nothing but a cheap, ambitious parasite." "And you're a fool," she shot back, her voice rising. "A weak fool who just got outplayed by the little wife you thought you could walk all over. You're not powerful, Cole. You're just a bully who lost control." Her words hit him harder than any of Ava Sharma's legal jargon. He stared at her, his chest heaving. "Get out." "What?" she whispered, her bravado vanishing. "Get out of my car." He enunciated each word with cold, deliberate fury. Her face crumpled. "You can't be serious. You're just going to leave me here on the side of the road in the middle of the night? I don't have a home to take you to, do I?" He sneered, the cruelty a balm on his wounded pride. "You wanted the thrill of sleeping with a king. Well, the king has just been dethroned at his own gate. The thrill is gone. Call an Uber. I'm sure your followers would love the story." With a sound that was half a sob and half a gasp of outrage, Scarlett scrambled out of the Bentley. She stood on the perfectly manicured grass verge, her crimson dress a slash of color against the darkness, shivering as the reality of her situation set in. Cole didn't give her a second glance. He wrenched the steering wheel, the Bentley executing a savage three-point turn, its expensive tires squealing a protest on the pristine asphalt. He sped away into the darkness, leaving Scarlett, Mr. Calloway, and his entire life behind him. As he drove, his phone began to light up with a relentless barrage of calls. The chairman of his board, his CFO, his frantic head of PR. He ignored them all. He was a ship taking on water, and the rats were calling to ask why the deck was wet. Inside the mansion, the heavy front door clicked shut, the sound of the deadbolt sliding home echoing in the cavernous marble foyer. Lauren stood there for a long moment in the silence, her back pressed against the cool wood. She closed her eyes, taking a deep, shuddering breath. It was done. She walked slowly through the ground floor, her hand trailing along the wall. This was the space Cole had remade in his own image, all gleaming surfaces, sharp angles, and cold, imposing art. He had stripped away the warmth her grandmother had cultivated, calling it cluttered and dated. He had called it an upgrade. Now Lauren saw it for what it was, a hollow monument to a hollow man. From the bay window in the living room, shrouded in darkness, she could see the distant red tail lights of the Bentley as it sped away down the long, winding drive. She felt no triumph, no satisfaction, only a profound, aching sadness for the man she had once loved, and an immense, bone-deep relief that the ordeal was finally over. She placed a hand on her belly, where her child rested safe and unaware. "It's just us now, little one," she whispered into the quiet of the house. "And we're going to be okay." She was no longer a guest. She was the protector of this house, this legacy, and the future growing inside her. She had finally come home. The first light of dawn was a dirty grey, filtering through the blackout curtains of the hotel suite. Cole Harrington woke with a jolt, his heart hammering against his ribs. For a disorienting moment, he didn't know where he was. The air was stale, smelling of old room service and expensive whiskey. This wasn't his bedroom with its vaulted ceiling and panoramic views of the Long Island Sound. This was a sterile, anonymous cage. Then the events of the previous night crashed down on him with the force of a physical blow. The glittering gala, the condescending laugh from Scarlett, the look of shock on Lauren's face, the sickening thud of her fall, and the final ignominious standoff at the gates of his own home. He stumbled out of bed, his custom tuxedo a wrinkled, pathetic shell of its former glory. He flicked on the giant television, hoping for a distraction, but found only an echo chamber of his own ruin. Every major news network was leading with his story. There it was on a massive high-definition screen, the video, a high-angle shot from a guest's phone, grainy but undeniable. The shove. It was brutal, unequivocal. There was no room for interpretation, no way to spin it as an accident. A panel of talking heads dissected his character like vultures. A shocking display of arrogance and cruelty, one commentator said. This goes beyond a marital dispute. It speaks to a fundamental flaw in judgment, another added. The ticker at the bottom of the screen told the rest of the story. Harrington Capital, HCAP, plummets in pre-market trading amid CEO scandal. He felt a surge of pure, unadulterated rage. They were crucifying him. He, Cole Harrington, who had bent this city to his will, was being reduced to a 2-minute segment on morning television. He snatched his phone, his thumb flying to Lauren's contact. He needed to fix this, to command her to release a joint statement, to make this go away. The call went straight to a voicemail he didn't recognize. "You have reached the voicemail of Lauren Bennett," her voice said, calm and impossibly professional. "Please leave a message." Bennett. She had dropped his name. The finality of it was like a door slamming shut in a long, dark hallway. He called again and again. Each time the same cool, detached voice met him, a stranger who had once shared his bed. His next call was to his lawyer, Martin Keene, a legal brawler known for his scorched earth tactics. "Martin," Cole barked, pacing the plush carpet, "I want you to destroy her, file everything, contest the prenup. I don't care what it costs. I want the house. I want my life back." There was a heavy sigh on the other end of the line. "Cole, I got the courier delivery from Ava Sharma an hour ago. I'm looking at the agreement now. You need to listen to me very carefully." Martin's voice, usually full of bluster, was sober. "This document, it's a fortress. It was drafted by Harold Bennett's personal firm. These guys don't draft contracts. They build legal cathedrals. The Greenwich estate was never a marital asset. It was deeded to a multi-generational irrevocable trust for Lauren's benefit before you were even in the picture. Your name isn't on a single page." "I put $30 million into that house," Cole roared, the injustice of it burning in his throat. "I know, and the prenup you signed has a clause. I'm reading it right now, that any financial or material contributions to non-marital assets are to be considered irrevocable gifts with no expectation of reimbursement." Martin's voice was grim. "You paid for your own cage, Cole, generously." Cole sank onto the edge of the unmade bed, the fight draining out of him, replaced by a cold dread. "Fine. She can have the house, a pile of bricks. What about my company? My actual assets?" "That," Martin said, his voice dropping lower, "is where the real demolition begins. You remember the morality clause? The one your previous counsel flagged and you called quaint?" Cole remembered. He had laughed, picturing some dusty Victorian standard of behavior. "Well," Martin continued, "it's not quaint. It's a nuclear weapon. For a publicly witnessed breach, and believe me, A video on every news channel counts as witnessed. The wronged party is entitled to a punitive settlement. It awards Lauren 50% of all assets accumulated during the marriage. He paused, letting the weight of the next words land. And her counsel, the formidable Ms. Sharma, is defining assets as the total appreciation in the market value of your Harrington Capital stock from the date of your wedding until yesterday. The air left Cole's lungs. The company's valuation had grown by nearly $4 billion in the 5 years he'd been married. 50% of that. The number was astronomical, unthinkable. It was a mortal wound to his fortune. "She wouldn't. She can't," he stammered. "She doesn't know the first thing about finance." "She doesn't have to," Martin countered tiredly. "She has Harold Bennett, and he, my friend, knows everything." While Cole was absorbing the scale of his financial ruin, Lauren was sitting in the sun-drenched morning room of the Greenwich estate. The house was quiet, the frantic energy of the previous night having given way to a profound calm. A cup of herbal tea steamed on the table beside her. Her hand rested on her belly, a protective, constant gesture. She wasn't celebrating. There was no triumphant joy, only the solemn weight of a necessary amputation. Her grandfather, Harold, sat across from her, his aged hands wrapped around his own cup. He had arrived at dawn. "Ava has made the preliminary call to the board's chairman," he said, his voice gentle. "They're in a state of panic. The stock is in free fall. They need a solution, and they need one now." Lauren looked out the window at the gardens she had so carefully helped design, the gardens Cole had always referred to as his. "I don't want the company, Grandpa. I never did. I don't want his name. I don't want his world. I just want him gone. I want to build a safe, quiet life for this baby." "I know, Lauren," Harold said, his eyes full of deep, fierce pride. "And that is precisely what we will secure for you. This isn't about revenge. It is about consequences. It's about ensuring the wolf you've ejected from the house can't circle back and tear it down." Ava Sharma joined them via a secure video call. Her face was all business. "The board meeting is scheduled for tomorrow. They've suspended Cole, but they're adrift. They fear a hostile takeover from your end." "Then we must reassure them," Lauren said, her voice finding a new strength. "Present the terms, Ava. His complete and permanent removal. In exchange, I will place my shares, my leverage, into a blind trust. Its only directive will be to ensure the company's stability. I'm not a corporate raider. I'm a mother protecting her future." It was a masterful strategy. She wasn't seizing power. She was restoring order. She was cauterizing the wound that Cole had inflicted, saving the livelihoods of thousands of employees and the investments of shareholders. She was doing what a real CEO should. The news of his termination came via a cold, 2-sentence email the following afternoon. He was no longer CEO, president, or chairman of Harrington Capital. A buyout of his remaining shares was being processed. He was out, cast out from the empire he had built with his own 2 hands. The subsequent weeks were a descent into a grey, featureless hell. His life, once a whirlwind of high-stakes meetings and glamorous events, shrank to the 4 walls of the hotel suite. The calls from his board stopped, replaced by calls from Scarlett's lawyer, negotiating the price of her silence. He wired the money without a second thought, a pathetic severance package for a relationship that had cost him everything. Scarlett Monroe vanished from the face of the earth, her social media wiped clean, a ghost in a blood-red dress. He read that Nate Whitaker had successfully poached 2 of his top project managers. The wolves were circling the wounded beast. He hit his absolute nadir one rainy Tuesday, nearly a month after the gala. The hotel room was a mess, the air thick with the smell of despair. Unshaven, drinking a glass of whiskey that might as well have been water, he aimlessly scrolled through a financial news site. And then he saw it. It wasn't a paparazzi shot, but a photo from a local Greenwich publication. The headline read, "Lauren Bennett pledges support for new prenatal care wing at Greenwich Hospital." In the photo, Lauren stood at a podium. Her pregnancy was obvious now, a beautiful, central part of her. She wore a simple cream-colored dress, and her face, free of the heavy makeup she'd worn for society events, was serene. She wasn't smiling exactly, but her expression was one of profound peace and purpose. She looked strong, healthy, and completely, unshakably whole. He stared at the image, the whiskey glass frozen halfway to his lips. The last vestiges of his anger, his denial, his self-pity didn't just crumble, they evaporated. In their place was a hollow, echoing clarity that was more painful than any rage. He saw the woman in the photo and remembered the girl he'd first met at an architectural fundraiser. Brilliant, passionate, with a laugh that could light up a room. He had been drawn to that light, but over the years he had done everything in his power to dim it, to make it fit into the small, ornamental box he required for a wife. He had mistaken her kindness for weakness, her quiet nature for passivity, her grace for submission. He had been given a masterpiece, and he had treated it like a cheap print, ready to be discarded for a newer, flashier model. The mansion, the company, the status. He saw now that they were all props on a stage. The real treasure had been Lauren herself, and the new life she was carrying, and he had shoved it all aside. He finally understood. That night, when the gates had refused to open and Mr. Calloway had turned him away, it wasn't just about a legal document. It was a metaphor for his entire life. He had never truly been the master of the castle. He was just a guest in Lauren's house, a guest in a life of quiet dignity he had never earned, and a guest in the presence of a strength he was too arrogant to recognize. Security hadn't just escorted him out of a mansion. They had escorted him out of a life he had never truly deserved, and could now never get back. And so Cole Harrington's gilded world came crashing down, not with a prolonged war, but with the quiet, decisive click of a gate he could no longer open. His story is a stark, brutal reminder that true power isn't about the name on a skyscraper or the balance in a bank account. It's about the foundations we build our lives upon. Cole built his on arrogance and betrayal, while Lauren, in her quiet way, stood upon a foundation of legacy, intelligence, and a prenuptial agreement he was too proud to read. He thought he was the king, but he was merely a guest in the Queen's castle, and when the time came, she simply and irrevocably changed the locks. What do you think? Was Lauren's move a brilliant act of self-preservation or cold-blooded revenge? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you were captivated by this story of downfall and hidden strength, please give this video a thumbs up. Share it with someone who loves a good drama. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories, where consequences always eventually come knocking. Thank you for listening.